Spring is in the air, and the weather is finally cooperating and finally warm. It's even the Easter holiday. What a great time of year it is. It's also even golf season. I'm a golfer. It's golf season. It is Golf SZN, and as you see there on the desk, it is, for the first time in 11 years, first time since 2008, it is golf season with Tiger Woods as a major champion again. So once again, it is a glorious time here in the Steel City. And even though the Pittsburgh Steelers are full-fledged into the offseason, and this is still relatively early into the offseason, even though the drama, hopefully, is behind us, the Steelers and the NFL are all over the sports calendar. They go year-round. There's 365 days of conversation and of news for the National Football League and the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they're still relevant. So it's already actually creating some excitement here in Pittsburgh and for Steeler fans with the release of the NFL schedule, and even before that, news breaking, as the NFL didn't really get to break this news. It happened earlier in that day with the Pittsburgh Steelers schedule being released and the Steelers schedule opening up the 2019 season on the road in New England as the defending champion Patriots will raise a sixth Lombardi Trophy against the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is another Radio Goal edition of Mic Drop here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. I am your host, Mike Asti, coming at you from up above Market Square here in downtown Pittsburgh. This Mic Drop, this Radio Gold edition of Mic Drop here on Pittsburgh Sports Live is brought to you by Pittsburgh Steelers Now. So Steelers Now, as well as Beaver County Auto. Mic Drop presented by Beaver County Auto here on Pittsburgh Sports Live via SteelersNow.com. Once again, as I say this every week, it's one of our new ventures in the Pittsburgh Sports Now family. Make sure to check out SteelersNow.com for the site that I'm kind of running here, along with the PSL venture, all of our Steelers news, notes, and analysis over there, SteelersNow.com. But for the purpose of this broadcast here, I'm going to go through the Steelers schedule, and as I say here in the title, I'm going to give you an incredibly early outlook and prediction for the Steelers 2019 season. Mind you, again, this could change based on what happens in the NFL tomorrow. This could change in terms of who the Steelers draft, because the Steelers, as has been said, Steelers are committed to drafting a new running back. We have that at SteelersNow.com. The NFL draft still has yet to occur, despite the NFL releasing the schedule, and we know the Steelers open up on the road to the Patriots. We know the full schedule, actually, a little different, normally opening up against the Browns. That's kind of been the norm. Usually the Patriot game is the end of the year. Now it starts the season. So we know the schedule and kind of can gauge it from there. We know who the Steelers lost and what the team currently is, but they're going to try to draft another running back. They're going to try to give some protection for James Conner. James Conner having a Pro Bowl season last year above my expectations for the Pitt product. I actually lost a bet with friend and colleague over at 93.7 The Fan, Doran Dickerson, who obviously a Pitt product and James Conner Pitt product. He thought much of what James Conner could do coming into last season. I didn't expect that, and he yet exceeded my expectations and many expectations with a Pro Bowl year, but it was spotty. There were some off games there, fumbled too much, and also got hurt. So they want some protection, a DeAngelo Williams type of running back to protect James Conner now that Le'Veon Bell is for sure not there, even though he was not a part of the team last season either. Obviously looking at wide receiver, obviously looking to give some protection for Juju Smith-Schuster, who Juju, emerging, a great young wide receiver, could certainly be a number one, but going to face a lot more double coverage now with AB gone and over in Oakland and bringing the drama over there. So it's going to be a less dramatic season, I'd imagine. It might mean Mike Tomlin's press conferences aren't as entertaining for myself and my colleagues who were there in Pittsburgh media, because they basically were a sitcom for last season and even the year before. Might not be as much now this year, But regardless, they're going to have less overall talent on the roster. The Browns bring in Odell Beckham Jr. They're looking like they're going to be better, and they were close to the playoffs last year. Now full season of Baker Mayfield and more All-Pros. Cobb there. And some changes for the Ravens, with Earl Thomas now under the fold. A little different, but another year of Lamar Jackson, who I don't have much expectations in. And then over there, the Bengals, of course, they're the Bengals. They're pretty much still a mess. Almost a guarantee to be last in the division, you'd figure, but it is now the end of the Marvin Lewis era, and they have a new coach over there near the Skyline Chili headquarters in Cincinnati. My favorite part of Cincinnati is still Skyline Chili. So the Steelers, certainly, despite many being down on them and the sexy pick being the Cleveland Browns, I did a whole show on this, so you can go back through the archives of Mike Drop here on Pittsburgh Sports Live and SteelersNow.com to make it clear that I wouldn't crown the Browns yet, okay? They had a great offseason. More expectations are on them than ever before, really, since returning to the NFL of the century, in all honesty. But Odell only meant one playoff appearance in 5 years with the Giants. There's no guarantee that he means a playoff appearance for the Browns. It's another year for teams to look at Baker. You just don't know, but the defense has also improved. And I'd imagine they're going to at least be a playoff team. Who the hell knows, though? The Steelers, despite losing Antonio Brown, despite now a second year without Le'Veon Bell, Jesse James in Detroit, absolutely still appears they could win the AFC North. And I know they're coming off a missed playoff appearance, but this schedule's not too brutal, as I now will go through it. And as I said, the Steelers open the season on Sunday Night Football against the Patriots. Now, this was one of the more surprising things of the Steelers' schedule, honestly, for me, because the last few years, obviously the Steelers and Patriots have played each other every year, despite not being in the same division. The last few years, it was at the end of the year. I mean, 2 years ago, I was there, the heartbreaking controversial loss on the Jesse James catch. I was there covering the game at Heinz Field. That game was in Pittsburgh. Led to a Steelers playoff appearance as well as for the Patriots. The Patriots going to the championship game and facing off against the Jaguars, who eventually would eliminate the Steelers in the divisional round. The Steelers with a bye, but then the disappointing loss with all their talent at home against the Jags. And last season, Steelers get the win, the 17-10 victory over the Patriots, the elusive win over the Patriots, the last year now of having to deal with Rob Gronkowski dominating them and carrying them up and down the field like a Terminator. He's gone. He's retired. Probably back in a couple years in the middle of a WWE appearance. Who the hell knows? But he's living his life and getting away from all his injuries on pure talent alone. And I know he didn't play long enough, so the overall numbers aren't there. But pure talent alone and what the numbers could have been if he would have had a long career like a Tony Gonzalez or Antonio Gates, like a Kellen Winslow Sr., Shannon Sharp, Rob Gronkowski, for what he did in his short career. It's the Sandy Koufax-like for NFL tight ends. Best tight end ever for my money, even though Steelers fans won't want to hear that. But it's a defending champion Patriot team now, and this game is in New England, not in Pittsburgh like it was the last couple of years, not at the end of the year like those games had implications on what would happen towards the playoffs and to the season. Steelers fighting for their playoff lives last year with the win. They didn't end up getting there, but a big victory they didn't expect to have, and if they wouldn't have had some games in which were losses that they thought would be wins, say opening up the year with a tie to the Browns or losing a 16-point lead to the Chargers or losing to the Raiders, losing to the Broncos who weren't playoff teams, they would have been a playoff team. But I will digress. I went over that time and time again through last season. But it's obviously going to be a very, very difficult game. Brady's another year older, but he still could get it done enough for them to win a championship last year, even though he was a little bit less than he was as the greatest quarterback of all time. Belichick's still there as well. They're still going to be a formidable foe, and they're raising the 6th Lombardi Trophy. That's going to be rough, obviously, and I'm certainly figuring that to be a loss. The Patriots do open up the year sometimes sluggish. There is the possibility of laying an egg like they have done in the past against the Chiefs after championship or Super Bowl appearances, but this is also a Patriot team that lost to this team a year ago. They're going to be very, very motivated to open up strong in front of their home fans, raising another banner. They literally do raise banners there at their stadium, even though it's a football field without a roof. And it's a rival who they lost to last year. They're looking for revenge, even though they won the Super Bowl. Brady can make anything out of really an offense. They don't have an elite running back, but they don't need to. They have enough weapons around him, even without Gronk. They're going to lose that pure playmaker. But Gronk has been so injured the last few years, he really wasn't there. Brady was still getting numbers and getting yards and that dink and dunk offense without Gronk for the most part. And their defense is absolutely the weakest part of the team. It absolutely is suspect, but so is the Steelers. The Steelers are weak there as well defensively, and this, again, is barring what happens on the draft. They have not been able to replace Ryan Shazier yet, so that's going to be a question mark, and hopefully, again, they will fix that inside linebacker position in the draft. You're figuring that's where they're going to go, but I got to peg that as a loss. I have to figure the Patriots are going to get the win. Steelers might surprise me like last year. Who the hell knows, but I'm going to go into a game against the Patriots figuring that's a loss. So I am assuming, and this may churn the wire for sports talk conversation and may make this show very, very interesting, although most here, media and fans alike, reasonable or unreasonable, expect to lose to the Patriots and even did last year. So they're going to start the year with a loss. It might make it fun here, but I don't think that'll get too dramatic just yet, figuring they're going to lose to the Patriots. Now, as we go through the rest of the schedule here, as I believe the live feed still is connecting me, but you're at least going to hear the audio. I did a show live a few weeks ago and at least got the audio. So at the very least, this is podcast form, but hopefully you can see my beautiful face when the images are not there. After going on the road to the Patriots, and that is primetime, that is Sunday Night Football, so they get that primetime slot. A game normally at the end of the year does open up the season, September 8th there on NBC. Steelers then come home the week later, just a run-of-the-mill 1 p.m. game, but it's going to be on Fox as an NFC team. They're at home. Where they open up the home season at Heinz Field will be September 15th at 1, but it's on Fox, so they're not going to get on the normal AFC CBS affiliate until 3 weeks into the season because of the prime time and then playing an NFC team. That game at home against the Seattle Seahawks, and I almost wanted to do a show on this, but I didn't have time last week and even a few days ago when the deal was officially announced, so I kind of let it to bed, but I could quickly bring it up here. Russell Wilson gets the big contract, gets the mega deal with the Seahawks. The highest paid player right now in the NFL is Russell Wilson. And the Seahawks are an average team, really. I don't expect them to be that much of a contender, or at least not for a championship. There's question marks now in defense. Earl Thomas is officially gone, even though he was injured most of last season. And there's not tons of weapons there. On paper, even losing AB and Bell, the Steelers are a better team, and the Steelers should get that win. It's at home. Seahawks not a bad team, though. If that was in Seattle, that'd be a big problem with their home field advantage. I'm actually going to chalk this up, and it's crazy. I'm going to chalk that up as a win. I'm going to say the Steelers get their first win of the season at home against the Seattle Seahawks after losing on the road to New England, but that wouldn't shock me if it went either way. Now, on Russell Wilson, highest paid player, and I saw that spark the conversation a lot of, does he deserve the money? And then weirdly, as it always seems to happen, a comparison between Russell Wilson and Big Ben Roethlisberger and who is better, and saw some tweets talking about just playoff wins and championships. And look, Russell Wilson's obviously not been in the league as long as Big Ben, so it's not really fair to do that. Ben, yes, does have more playoff wins. Yes, he does have more championships. But Russell Wilson has been in the league about half as long, so he's going to have more opportunities, and obviously that's mostly just about team success. You can't truly evaluate individuals of just what the team does, even for quarterbacks. But I'm not discounting it at all, but you just can't bring that up only, and I saw some ridiculous tweets going in that direction. Now, just on the contract alone, Russell Wilson's a guy that, and I love if I actually could find my tweet here from a while ago, but Russell Wilson, he's a champion, has a Super Bowl ring, led his Seattle Seahawks actually to 2 Super Bowl appearances, and should have 2 rings like Big Ben if it wasn't for the whole Pete Carroll and Marshawn Lynch and not running the football late in that loss to New England. But Russell Wilson's a guy who I could argue in the beginning of his career, he might have been a bit overrated. I mean, he had a great defensive team, one of the greatest defenses of all time, with Richard Sherman and company there, the Legion of Boom. They were able to get him 2 appearances and 1 championship in the beginning portion of his career. He was mostly just kind of managing the game. And yet, like Brady did kind of in the beginning of his career, where he wasn't as prolific when his team was better overall around him, especially defensively, then he got some more weapons. You saw the Moss years, and he became eventually the greatest of all time with the gaudy numbers and the MVPs. I'm not saying Russell Wilson's the best in the game right now. I'm not even saying that he's ever going to win an MVP or that he'll ever claim to be best in the game, and who knows in terms of the Hall of Fame, or who knows whether you want to call him elite or not. It depends on whether you just go to the top 5 or you extend from that. However, the highest paid in the mega deal is going to be given, it's going to be offered to whichever quarterback is important to a franchise, so whichever franchise quarterback is up for a new deal. And Russell Wilson did the whole thing at 3 a.m. If the deal isn't signed by then, if I don't have a new deal, I'm going to walk and go somewhere else. And there absolutely would have been teams that wanted Russell Wilson for sure with that resume. And he's now actually become underrated based on what he's done the last few years especially. Weapons have continuously left him in Seattle. Marshawn Lynch is no longer there. There's less of a running game. It's okay, but there's no longer a Hall of Famer there on the ground for him in Seattle. You're seeing an exodus of weapons and wide receivers for Russell Wilson. And yet, every single year of his career, for many people who think he's not a good enough quarterback to warrant the deal, which, again, it just goes to the quarterback that's up for a new deal then. It doesn't matter if he's the best or not. He's not Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady. However, he does deserve the money for his importance of the Seattle Seahawks anyway. 3,000 plus passing yards every single season of his career. 3,000 plus, if you think that's still a benchmark, and many do, 3,000 plus passing yards every single year of his career. I believe it's 2, maybe 3, but at least 2 4,000 plus passing yard seasons. So 3,000, if it's a benchmark or not for you, that's a debate now in the new era. 4,000 certainly is a big deal still. That doesn't happen every year for every quarterback. There's only a handful of guys every year doing that. Some may get to 5,000, but they usually have prolific weapons around them. Russell Wilson, 2 4,000 plus yard passing seasons with not that many weapons around him, really, especially at wideout. There's no Hall of Famers he's playing with as a wide receiver. In fact, may finish his career without ever playing with a Hall of Fame wide receiver or tight end. So 3,000 every year, 4,000 a couple years, 20 plus touchdowns every year of his career, a few years with 30 plus touchdowns. Those are all the benchmarks that the average fan would care about. 64% in terms of completion percentage, 64%. That's better than the Cam Newtons of the world, who can't even touch 60 on a regular basis. And I got flack for that apparently controversial tweet that he was overrated this past NFL season, but he is, and Russell Wilson's underrated. 64% completion, so he's getting it done without all pro talent around him and all the benchmark numbers throughout his career. He deserves the money. They need to pay the money, and without him, they'd be way worse off. He's asked to do a lot for that team with who they have now in Seattle. So I'm figuring the loss at New England to open up the year. I'm thinking they beat Seattle, but if they don't beat Seattle, or even if they do, the Niner game could be a problem. And I get Garoppolo's there, and I get he was hurt last year, but it should be back now healthy. It'd be a first year of them thinking they have a full system at quarterback there in San Fran. And the Niners, don't get me wrong, I'm not predicting them to go win a championship or an NFC championship appearance or maybe not even a playoff appearance. I mean, they think they're getting better, but there's not much there. There were rumors of Le'Veon Bell, rumors of Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown wanted to be there to play in the shadows of his idol, Jerry Rice, but it didn't happen. And they don't have too many weapons, but you're figuring if Garoppolo's healthy, they should be better than they were a year ago. Richard Sherman is there defensively. You're figuring they're going to be better than a year ago. You're figuring they'd be better than a year ago, okay? So that's getting them about a 500 season, a little bit less, but there's a chance they could flirt with it. Wouldn't surprise me. There's also always a team that wins a few games, then turns it on the next year. Again, I'm not overly predicting the Niners, but this is what the Steelers do, and you guys know that better than anybody. Just look at last season. There's going to be losses to teams that are not playoff teams. There's going to be that Raiders loss of a year ago. There's going to be tying the Browns like they did last year. They may not tie anybody, but there's going to be the asinine games and the blown leads. Doesn't matter who's on the team. That's what they do. Wash, rinse, and repeat every year. They're going to have those laying egg games, even if you think they're a playoff team. So I'm thinking they're going to get up for a team like Seattle, Ben versus Russell Wilson, and maybe go at them and get that victory at home to open up the year at Heinz Field. Lose to New England like they always do. And then I'm actually going to throw a loss here. I'm going to say loss at San Francisco. West Coast trip, like going to Oakland all those years. It's always a problem for the Steelers. So, again, I'm going to assume the Steelers lose in San Francisco. Not a great playoff team by any means, but they're going to have one of those hiccups, and going to the West Coast wouldn't surprise me if that's the first one, especially coming off confidence of beating Seattle. Although maybe Seattle's a loss and the Niners are a win like it's supposed to be. So we'll see. Either way, 2-1 to open up those 3 games. Monday Night Football against the Bengals. Burfict's gone. He's now in Oakland, so it's a safer game, at least. You don't have to worry about anybody getting seriously injured or trying to have their block knocked off like Burfict did to AB. But they're teammates now. It's all cool. The Bengals aren't a good team. Probably worse in the division. That's all I need to say about it. Feel bad for AJ Green, really, with how talented he is. But Monday Night Football, September 30th, primetime game, second primetime game in 4 weeks for the Steelers early on in the year. Yeah, I believe 5 primetime games this season, which I'm sure some Browns fans are upset because they had the big off season. The Steelers had a bad one, and yet Pittsburgh still has more primetime games. But Pittsburgh's a better ratings draw, guys. It's all about ratings. Go back to my Twitter for some commentary there on the NHL and their rating situation in the playoffs right now with stars and big markets out. Regardless, that's a win. It's a win against the Bengals, of course. I mean, I can't go any other way. Wouldn't surprise me if they lose any games they're supposed to win, but I got to pick a win there. At home, they stay at home. Baltimore Ravens, October 6th. Again, week 5. I'm going to say that's a win. I'm going to say that's a win in the rivalry against the Bengals. I don't think much of Lamar Jackson. I know he took him to the playoffs last year and replaced Joe Flacco, and Flacco now gone in Denver. But the Mark Ingram at running back, maybe they're going to go to him a lot. He's going to have to carry more of the load there than he probably did in New Orleans, which he may like to end his career. But I don't see it for Baltimore. They may somehow crawl into a wild card if not winning the division, just because of the fact that maybe the Browns will falter under pressure and the AFC is not that elite or deep of a conference at the very least. There's the Chiefs, the Patriots, the Steelers. You figure get back to the playoffs. The Chargers, in terms of teams you're assuming are going to be in the postseason, maybe not even Pittsburgh. So, but that's a win against Baltimore. I'm going to go another victory there. Then we're going, here, give you the visual again, at the Chargers. At the Chargers, 8:20 again. This is Sunday Night Football, NBC. This is the 3rd primetime game in the season, and this is right before the bye week. So it's an important game for the Steelers right before the bye. But I am going to give the Steelers a loss here. They lost a 16-point lead at home on Sunday Night Football a year ago against the Chargers, squandering a game. The Chargers obviously were a good team last year, but 16-point lead should hold against anybody, especially primetime and at home. I'm going to assume they lose this one, though. I just got to give them another loss early in the year. I'm going to say they go into the bye week on a loss, on a losing note, and it's, again, like San Francisco. This is a much better team than the Niners are, but it's a team they're familiar with. However, a team in the West Coast on the road. So Phillip Rivers and company, they know how to play the Steelers. They know how to score points against the Steelers, especially the spotty secondary for Pittsburgh as it stands now. And I'm going to have that be a loss. I'm going to go on the road to the Chargers. They lost last year to the Chargers, and they had a big lead and blew it. So I'm going to say that's a loss there. Then after the bye, and I do see one of these comments here during the Ben Russell Wilson conversation, got some activity here in the chat. Russell's a better leader. I mean, again, a lot of criticism on Big Ben in terms of whether he's a leader or not and the whole immaturity, and I'm not here to say that Ben should be totally absolved. Obviously, the defense I gave on why the Steelers protect him and Kevin Colbert protects him more when he makes jerk-like comments, when he gets sarcastic, when he kind of throws teammates under the bus, and he does it for sure, especially on his radio show that the rumors are may not happen any further, which would be kind of interesting, them trying to maybe quiet the drama storm that those shows usually do erupt. I get video from those. But there's conversation about him being a leader because of what AB said, because of what other ex-teammates have said, and even Ryan Clark's, who defended him, it wasn't that strong. And Ben is a little bit of an egomaniac, but they're going to defend the quarterback more than any other position. It's a franchise quarterback. It's a championship quarterback, and it's a quarterback-driven league. But Russell Wilson, there's none of that said about him. He's won a championship. He's been in the league a lot less time in Ben's second ring that he has over Russell Wilson. He didn't really play well. His first championship was an okay game managing season, but a horrible game in the Super Bowl. So who knows really what goes in that locker room. I've been around it, but some of it I think is kind of unnecessary drama that these ex-teammates are throwing on Big Ben. But in terms of against Russell Wilson as a leader, there's no negative comments said about Russell Wilson. So it's kind of all I'll at least say on that. And obviously criticism does surround Big Ben. After the bye, and to quickly recap here, so loss at New England, a win on Seattle, loss San Fran, win Bengals, beat the Ravens, loss at the Chargers. That gives the Steelers 3 losses already in the year. So that's 3 losses in the first 6 weeks of the season. So they're looking at 500 going in to October 28th after the bye, a relatively early bye week now for Pittsburgh, at Miami Dolphins, another Monday Night Football game, their 4th, I believe, so far of the year. So Monday Night Football again after the bye, so it's a little bit maybe even of a longer bye based on that situation. But win, Miami Dolphins, they're not going to be that good. They move on from Tannehill, but still question marks there. I don't think that's a playoff team by any means, maybe an average team yet again like they always are. So that's a victory. Home against the Colts. This could go either way, honestly. And I know they're at home and you figure they're going to win more games at home and get a bump being at home. But Andrew Luck had a borderline MVP type of year last year. He really, really did. I mean, he was the guy that if it wasn't for the historically amazing first season for Patrick Mahomes as a starter, Andrew Luck could have argued for MVP, and he did get some consideration and conversation, even though it was the unanimous award for Patrick Mahomes. Drew Brees obviously right there behind him with more of a maybe an efficient type of season. Mahomes got the MVP. Good for him. He deserved it. But Andrew Luck, for what he dealt with that offensive line years ago when he was always hurt, finally giving him some protection. And yes, there's T.Y. Hilton and company, and there are weapons there. They were in the Le'Veon Bell rumors, too. They didn't bring him in. Bell wanted to go there with some likes on Instagram throughout the season. But Andrew Luck's a stud. I believed in him since out of Stanford, and many did as well. He was one of the highly touted prospects coming into the NFL draft since that 83 draft with Marino, Elway, etc., and Jim Kelly. And I'm going to give the Steelers a win there because they're at home, but he could take advantage of the Steelers' secondary for sure. Their defense isn't really any better than the Steelers, so that's the run-of-the-mill. A rare game for the Steelers on CBS. They only have had 3 of them by this point, including that one. I'm going to give them a win. They stay home, so 3 straight games at home after the bye. Home against the Los Angeles Rams. I'm going to say they lose at L.A. for the Chargers. This is going to be L.A. at home, and it's the Rams, an NFC team now in L.A. And I'm going to Aaron Darnold gets to come back to Pittsburgh after playing at Pitt, and we know what he did there, donating to the Pitt program and what he's meant to the Pitt program as one of those NFL Hall of Famers to have come out of Pitt, joining Larry Fitzgerald and Marino for sure. And he's moving up the mountain there in terms of where they stand historically. Defensive player of the year every time he touches the field, really, for every season. That's the possibilities with Aaron Darnold, Jared Goff, and Todd Gurley and company. They're one of the best teams in the NFL, certainly could be the best team in the NFC yet again, losing the Super Bowl to New England this past season. And I don't know if the year will be as special as it was for Sean McVay and company last year. They also had some controversy in that Saints NFC title game in order to get there. And I detailed this on past shows that this is part of why Le'Veon Bell didn't get a better deal with the Jets and didn't get all the money that he wanted in the past, is because it was evident with C.J. Anderson turning on the Jets and rolling off his couch fresh as a daisy and leading them to the NFC crown that you don't need an elite running back to win and to win championships in the National Football League. But when you have one, it's great. So Todd Gurley's there and certainly carry him through the dog days of the NFL season like he'll be doing at this point. I'm going to assume this is a loss. And I'll tell you right now, here's how I'm going to look at this. Either they're going to lose to the Colts, which I have as a win but could easily be a loss, or they'll lose to the Rams. I don't know if they're going to lose both, but since I had the Colts as a win, I'm going to have the Rams be a loss. At Cleveland. Now, this is interesting, folks. I made it clear, and, you know, it is something that I'm still clear on and should be clear on, and everybody should try to understand, even though there's a bunch of hoopla. Yes, they bring in Odell Beckham Jr. Yes, they make some moves. Yes, there's the most pressure. Yes, Baker Mayfield was a stud. Offensive Rookie of the Year, looking better and better as the weeks go on. And yes, it gives them some stability they hadn't had really ever, especially since coming back to the NFL. But it's still a young team. It's still an inexperienced team. It's still a team that hadn't really ever dealt with this kind of pressure. Players have not dealt with this since college, really, for any of the stars on the team. And it's a rivalry game, and yes, they've played it close in the past, these two teams, and the Browns almost beat the Steelers last year. They tied the Steelers to open up the year without Baker Mayfield. Even a couple years ago when the Browns were 0-16, they played close games against Pittsburgh and could have actually won both of them. That could have been their only 2 wins of the year or only win of the year. Could have been against the Steelers, as crazy as that would have been. And you figure this is a better Browns team. It's Monday Night Football, or Thursday Night Football, another primetime game there, 8:20. Now we're getting around Thanksgiving, my favorite holiday. One of these Browns games are going to eventually lose. So I'm going to say it's this one on the road. And Browns fans are going to really go nuts if they would lose this because, yes, they play again in a couple weeks, but that's the first time of the season. The Patriots game is usually at the end of the year, whereas the Browns game is usually at the beginning of the year. They don't play the Browns at all until November 14th. And in fact, they played the Bengals and Ravens already, as I said earlier. So this is the first time they play the Browns. They've already played the rest of the division to this point. The Browns are going to be a better team. They almost made the playoffs last year. I wouldn't be surprised if they miss it all and flounder under that pressure and some drama erupts. But I'm going to predict they make the playoffs and get a wild card berth and at least get a wild card. So I'm going to say that's a win. Okay, they played close games the last few years. They're going to at least score some points, be entertaining on offense. And their defense is arguably better than the Steelers on paper. You throw Joe Hayden from the Steelers back to Cleveland and it would potentially be definitive. Kind of kicking the gonads for him. The Browns finally getting better after he's gone. And Joe Thomas, more than anybody else, maybe the greatest offensive lineman ever, never played in one playoff game, does some podcasts with Barstool Sports, but guy retired another year, and they're going to now looks to be a playoff team. I'd come back if I were him, but he doesn't look like an O-lineman anymore. The guy, I'd bring him back and have him play tight end just for the hell of it and get him into the postseason. I'm going to say that's a win for the Browns, though. At Cincinnati the next week, that's just around the middle 1 p.m. CBS game. That's going to be a victory. They beat the Bengals twice next season. The Bengals are awful. They're going to be a 2-3-4-1 team at the most, last in the division, you'd figure, unless the Ravens really fall off the map in another year of Lamar Jackson, which can't discount, but they're both wins against the Bengals, I'm going to assume. Cleveland again then, December 1st, and I'm going to say the Browns win the game at home in Cleveland, so then the Steelers win the game in Pittsburgh. Or maybe that'll flip, but they're going to split. The Browns will finally beat the Steelers with their impressive roster, and there will be, smack talk if they get the first one until we get here. But the Steelers aren't going to lose both. So that'll be a win if they lost the other one. At Arizona, the Cardinals are going to be bad. I mean, regardless of what they do in the draft and who they select number 1 overall and Kyler Murray or whoever else, it'll either be a young quarterback learning the way and getting a maturation process, or maybe Rosen again and still, even though he's played in the NFL, it's going to be another year of learning. And they hired a coach that was under 500 in college, even though that was kind of the Sean McVay way. So with Cliff Kingsbury. So it's going to be fun maybe there, but they're not going to win that much. unfortunately for Larry Fitzgerald, and that's going to be a victory at Arizona. The Bills then December 15th. That is a win. The Bills might be better than last year after 2 years ago breaking the playoff drought and getting into the postseason, falling off last year a bit. I don't see the Bills as that much better. Should be a victory. Although, again, they're going to be these games where the Steelers are going to lose, even though you'd figure they would win, because that's what the Steelers do. So if any of those games could be possible, it would be that one, even though it's at home. That would kind of be like the Niners game at the beginning of the year. So right now I'm going to say a win, but it wouldn't shock me if they lose. At the Jets, December 22nd. And I will tell you, this makes sense to throw this up right now. This kind of is a little aside as well. And I did a show on this already. The Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown saga, totally different. Fans need to kind of cut Bell some slack. It was about money. He didn't even win the deal. Less drama there than Antonio Brown for sure. Not throwing teammates under the bus anymore. In fact, showing love to James Conner on Twitter seemingly every day. But that game should have been in the beginning of the season. And I threw a tweet like this. I saw some others. That should have been in the beginning of the year, because that game could easily be a flex game where if the Steelers and Jets, if it has playoff implications or whatever else, even for one team, that game could be flexed to primetime, giving the Steelers a sixth primetime game. Because it's 1 p.m. CBS end of the year. That game should have been earlier. And also, by having it earlier, you would ensure that Le'Veon Bell will be there. I mean, he could be suspended or hurt already by that point. With Sam Darnold still young, they're going to drive him into the ground and give him a bunch of carries that he probably doesn't want. In terms of, he'd be glad he preserved his body for a year before he gets the carry load he'll see in New York. There won't be time to do any more rap albums during the NFL season for him. I don't feel it'll be a lot of hot tub baths when he's not playing. And they might be better than a year ago, but probably not. Probably about the same. I do like Darnold, though. And that's at New York. So if he's there, and I actually hope he is and playing well to give some intrigue to the game, there's going to be drama going in after he sat out that year and had his little statement against the Steelers. Not as scorned to say the games would be against the Raiders, who unfortunately are not on this schedule, even though they play the Raiders every year. Kind of unfortunate they don't see them this year with Antonio Brown now there. But they go at the Jets. Hopefully he's not injured or suspended, and that game shouldn't have been earlier in the year. But it's interesting. He threw up some tweets about what he'll do on the ground, and he'll be motivated. But I think the Steelers are going to key in on him. They're going to know him well. I'm actually going to almost feel like the Buffalo Bills game might be more of a loss just because they got to figure one of these games being a loss. They're not going to lose at Arizona. I'll say that's a win at New York in the whole Le'Veon Bell mess. And then closing the year, you don't want to close a season with a loss like you're going to open up the year with a loss. But at Baltimore, like Browns, again, I don't think much of Lamar Jackson, but he did take him to the playoffs last year. They're a better team defensively with Earl Thomas now younger and better than Terrell Suggs, who is out there in Arizona and will play the Steelers. But at Baltimore, I'm going to say that's a loss. So I'm going to say the Steelers finish out the year losing on the road in the rivalry to the Ravens. So, to calculate here, believe I'm going to match what I thought. Going into this, I thought I'd have the Steelers at 10-6, probably about. And this, again, it's before the draft. It's incredibly early in terms of predicting the Steelers' season. Incredibly early for any team. Incredibly early. That's why I have it there as the title, and you got to yell it. Incredibly early. I should have actually put it in all caps, and I will potentially in the tweets. Incredibly early prediction, but I was figuring 10-6. I've seen a lot of 9-7. They missed the playoffs last year. AFC is going to be about the same. There's going to be some elite teams. There's going to be some great teams, but not tons. It's not going to be loaded like it was years ago. The NFC might actually be deeper with the Rams, the Saints, the Cowboys, maybe the Falcons being back. The Packers maybe could be back going. The Bears, I mean, that's already more contenders than I see out of the AFC. And the Eagles, again, also a couple years removed from a championship, could be back as a contender. So it's going to be a deeper conference in the NFC, even if maybe the Patriots win again like they always do and they're the defending champion. The Chiefs could be one of the best teams as well as the Chargers again, but not as deep out in the AFC. The Steelers should be a playoff team again, even though they missed last year. Less drama could actually mean they're more focused, even though they're worse on paper. And I was thinking 10-6 to go through this again. So if it's 0-1 at New England, then a victory, 1-1, 1-2 in the first 3 weeks. 2-2 with the win against the Bengals, 3-2 with the victory at home against the Ravens for that first winning streak of the year, 3-3 going into the bye, losing at the Chargers, 4-3 over Miami, then 5-3 on November 3rd, a victory over Indy. I'll give them the win, but again, they're going to lose one of these two games, so then I'll say a loss against the Rams, even though that's at home. And that puts them 5-4 at that point, I believe. Let me count the losses here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so 5-4 going into the Browns. At Cleveland, I'm saying 5-5. They're looking at 500 towards the end of the year, which would be maybe catastrophic. Some more of these talk shows will be gold, and will run rampant over Pittsburgh and the Steeler Nation. I'm sure they'll start freaking out here. But 5-5, that loss to the Browns is going to be a lot of drama there, I'm sure, if they lose to the Browns after so many close games in recent years and how bad the Browns have been. But I think they're a playoff team, even though I wouldn't crown them for the division or beyond just yet from what they did in the offseason. At the Bengals is a victory, so they're back over 500, 6-5. Victory over the Browns after losing, 7-5. At Arizona, victory, 8-5. This is now going to be the biggest winning streak of the year. Bills, Ravens, they should beat the Bills. They should beat the Bills, even though I wouldn't be shocked if they lose, but I'll give them the win because I don't think much of the Bills. At the Jets, I'm going to say win there, and they neutralize Le'Veon Bell. And then I have a loss at the Ravens. But if they do lose to the Bills, they maybe beat the Ravens. I don't know. 9-7 probably is an average safe bet here prediction. I'm going to go 10-6 to be a little bit more optimistic. Weirdly for me, usually I keep it real and am not that optimistic. Usually I lean on the opposite side. But after missing the playoffs, after losing AB, losing Le'Veon Bell, losing all that drama, even losing Jesse James to the money over there in Detroit, they're different. And they're going to, as we said, I mean, we went through this, they're going to be looking for a running back to add some security to James Conner there in the draft. They're going to be looking at a wide receiver to give security to Juju, who's going to be double covered now in the draft. Doubt anything else is really going to happen in terms of changing the roster outside of the draft. So mostly they're looking at a team that's similar to what it is now in terms of impact players. But J.J. Watt, another year dominating defensively. He's a future NFL player, defensive player of the year for my money. So certainly could help the defense, even though it's still suspect in the secondary. Replacing Shazier, potentially looking to do that in the draft as well. Donnie has an article on Steelers Now looking at that direction. And there's a lot of coverage on SteelersNow.com and what the Steelers may do in the draft. And inside linebacker replacing Shazier is something that they haven't been able to replace for a couple years since his injury and desperately need to replace, but it, of course, is easier said than done. So barring the draft, barring whatever anybody else does, and barring any other crazy moves or turbulent offseason of drama that could absolutely happen for the Steelers or any other team, there you go. Click subscribe there on the graphic. Read it, let it seep in. I'm looking at 10-6 for the Steelers. My incredibly early prediction, 9-7, wouldn't surprise me. That's probably where they'll fall back on. I don't see them being worse than 9-7. This is not that hard of a schedule. The doomsday scenario is they have a schedule that I said, similar to what I read off for you in my prediction, and then they also lose the Seahawks game, which could be a loss. They also lose the Bills game, which I was swinging on, and they maybe lose both Browns games or both Ravens games. Then you're looking at a 5 or 6 win season because they're going to lose a few others here and maybe even an upset. But I think they're actually going to have less drama and be more focused and be better and more motivated from who left the team from the past drama and even all the hype over there in Cleveland. Looking at 10-6 is where I'm going to go for my incredibly early prediction. I'll be 10-6, 9-7, probably where they fall back on and where I've seen most predictions, but I am going to go 10-6. So now, click subscribe. Make sure to click subscribe. And make sure to now follow everything we're doing, SteelersNow.com. We have the draft coming up, and we're going to announce kind of how we're going to cover that. It's going to be all hands on deck and maybe live notebooks throughout the draft and live coverage. We're going to split it up, but it's going to be one of us giving you that coverage in tune all through the draft and some other housekeeping news. It wasn't a misread, and they're still sponsoring us, but this is no longer the Beaver County Auto Studios here up above Market Square in downtown Pittsburgh. Right now, it's just the PSLive Studios, which is why that's what the graphic says there, unlike past shows. But the Beaver County Auto banners behind me, they don't need to go away. Beaver County Auto is still within the family. They are still sponsors over there. Pittsburgh Sports Now, the mothership there within the whole family of networks. They're going to sponsor the Pitt and high school coverage throughout the Whippeal and Pitt, Duquesne, Robert Morris. PJ is the owner of Beaver County Auto. He's certainly a Pitt guy, so it makes sense there with him and Vukovican pulling that off. He's going to be a sponsor, PittsburghSportsNow.com, and he also is going to move over and become the title sponsor right now, the title sponsor for SteelersNow.com. Started it towards the offseason here throughout the drama. Did well with that, but our team will get you a first full season of coverage, get our first full season of coverage to start this next year that I just previewed, SteelersNow.com, and Beaver County Auto is going to be the title sponsor with SteelersNow.com, and you can see their banner over there. But right now, for anyone who owns a business or friend of yours owns a business or just businesses you like that you think might be interested, drop a comment. We won't mind it, or DM me at Mike Asti 11, throw it up there. Rather than the hate and threats, I'd love to have some conversation on sponsorship. I've talked to realtors and different restaurants and bars, and we have sponsors all through. Piper's Pub is one of them, all through the Pittsburgh Sports Now family of networks, Redbeards for Pittsburgh Hockey Now. So not all of them sponsor every site. Some of them sponsor just one. Some of them sponsor multiple. But it's all within the family, and we now have an open sponsorship for the PSL studios here. So PSL Live Studio right now, but it could be whatever. It could be something, your name even if you want to foot the bill. We are open now to sponsorship for the studio. Beaver County Auto sponsoring Pittsburgh Sports Now and SteelersNow.com. But this is no longer the Beaver County Auto Studios. We do thank them for sponsoring the studios for as long as they did. They're going to cover those websites and sponsor those sites, but this is no longer the Beaver County Auto Studios. PSL Live Studios right now, but certainly open to hearing sponsorship. And regardless, I'm coming at you from up above Market Square here in downtown Pittsburgh. Feel free to tell me why I'm wrong. Feel free to either over on Twitter or comment here on the site, as we got some activity in the chat, but not tons, unlike past shows with more activity there in the lives. Or over on my Twitter, over at PGH Sports Live on Twitter. Here you go. At PGH Sports Live on Twitter. Make sure to click subscribe to us on the YouTube channel. Makes it easier for us to get this content to you and gives you an instant notification there when we do lives like this, especially late at night like this one. I don't mean to cover Tiger Woods there in the TW Nike hat, as I had that years ago back during the heyday of domination. Tiger Woods back, at least in terms of being a major champion. So it's golf season and Tiger Woods major champion as ZN for the first time in 11 years. Maybe I'll actually wear it here to close off, give Tiger Woods the publicity that he deserves since the graphic covers him. And make sure to hit up the family of networks, PittsburghSportsNow.com, PittsburghHockeyNow.com, now into the offseason. Penguins losing, getting swept, surprise fashion by the Islanders in the first round. PittsburghHockeyNow.com, PittsburghSoccerNow.com as well. The Hounds are into the season, so it's Pirates and Hounds coverage in terms of in-season. Not a Pirates Now yet, or baseball now, but find that coverage, Noah and Alan, their game coverage and Bucko show at pghsportslive.com, pghsportslive.com, where all of this content from Pittsburgh Sports Live on the YouTube channel can live and live eternally, or until I remove it, over there on the website, pghsportslive.com and SteelersNow.com for all the Steelers content, especially these episodes of Mic Drop, the Steelers-centric episodes, but I do dabble in the rest, so we will see. I'm that versatile. Brushing my shoulders off. SteelersNow.com for our Steelers coverage here from the channel, as well as we now are going to cover the NFL draft and get away from the drama. What do you think the Steelers' record will be? Are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic? Either way, it's not ridiculous based on what we saw last year. Less drama, for me, means they're going to be more focused. But admittedly, it might be less fun to cover the team because the drama at least was entertaining. It was a train wreck waiting to watch. It was a sitcom. I don't know. Might kind of miss it.